Hello, and welcome back to the Richard Talaferro podcast, where we take a look at career insights and give advice to career changers. There's a mindset that sounds on the surface motivating, but can actually lead to burnout if we're not careful. Maybe you heard of the phrase, beat yesterday. It was even a tagline for Garmin, the company that makes sports watches and fitness trackers. The idea behind it was push yourself harder, be better than you were yesterday. That sounds great, right? But here's the thing, whether you're in fitness, work, or in life, beating yesterday isn't always possible. And more importantly, it's not always the best approach. So let's take a look at why this is and what we can do instead. Now, picture this, you're a runner or a cyclist, and some days you feel like you're flying. Legs are strong, energy is high, and you're smashing your personal best. But on other days, your legs feel like lead, the weather's not cooperating, and life is just getting in the way. No matter how much you want to try to beat yesterday, your body is telling you, not today, pal. And that's how progress works. It's not a straight upward climb. It's a series of ups and downs with rest and recovery built in. And yet, in our careers, we often forget this. We chase KPIs, revenue targets, constant growth, believing that anything less than improvement is failure. But what happens when the pressure never lets up? You hit a wall. Burnout sets in. Rather than crushing your goals, you're struggling just to get out of bed. The joy of weekends disappears because you're too exhausted to enjoy them. Does that sound familiar to you? So, what if we measure success differently? What if, instead of beating yesterday, we focus on sustainable progress? I learned this the hard way a few years ago, working in a high pressure newsroom. Every day felt like the Super Bowl. High stakes, high stress, and no room for error. At first, I thrived on it. But over time, I saw something interesting. The people who lasted weren't the ones who went full throttle every day. They were the ones who knew when to ease up, when to ask for help, and when to take a pause before pushing forward again. Now, the same principle applies to your career. You don't have to grind nonstop to succeed. In fact, the most successful people build rest into their routine. Even elite athletes take recovery days. So, why do we have to do anything different? So, let's talk about some of the ways to stay in the game for the long haul. Recognize that small wins count. Now, I talk about small wins all the time. And some days, progress is about breakthroughs. And other days, it's just about showing up. If you do one thing to move forward today, that's still a win. Give yourself grace. Last year, I had a calf strain that took me out of running for weeks. Then, my progress wasn't about beating yesterday. It was about healing and then slowly rebuilding. Your career is the same way. Setbacks happen. Recovery is part of the process. And surround yourself with a team. Even solo sports like running and cycling have teams behind them, coaches, supporters, training partners. Your career is no different. Find mentors, colleagues, and friends who remind you to take a breath and pace yourself. So instead of trying to beat yesterday, let's try learning from yesterday. Some days, progress means pushing a little harder. Other days, it means knowing when to rest, reset, and rebuild for the future. Your career, just like a long distance race, isn't about burning out before the finish line. It's about staying strong for the journey ahead. If you're searching for work that works for you, I invite you to go to richardtaliavero.com and schedule a complimentary call with me, and let's talk about it. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.